Hi, I'm Alessandro Perri. I am the Vice President of External Affairs at the Chicago Debate Society. I'm a rising third year at UChicago studying political science and mathematics. I am doing this lecture, as you can see in the big font below, for Chicago Debate Academy, which is running a session July 29th and 30th. I am the PF Curriculum Director for that session. So what am I going to cover in this sort of brief lecture? Three general things. One, what can debate do to get you into college? Two, how does debate prepare you for college? And three, how can you make the most of your debate experience vis-a-vis college more generally? So, important disclaimer, not an admissions officer, not a college counselor. This is from my experience, what I hear from others. The college process is constantly changing. It applies differently to everyone. Having said that, I think I've talked to a lot of people, obviously being a college student who does debate. So I think I have some experiences that could potentially be useful. I think the general reason why I'm doing this lecture is because a lot of admissions advice is sort of generalized, and a lot of the time people don't quite know what to do with debate. That is, there is not a lot of advice that is specific to debaters. There is not a niche of counselors that is solely for debaters. So I aim to kind of fill that gap by addressing things that are very specific to debate and how you should articulate it in the college process. So first things first, what is debate not? It is not an automatic ticket in the top 20. It is not useless unless you win everything. And it is not something you should primarily pursue for college. The truth, as it tends to be, is somewhere in between. If you pursue debate assiduously, you explain it well, it could really help you, but it should not be the main reason you pursue debate. I cannot emphasize this enough. I will caution against two general things here. I will caution against, on one extreme, people who say, oh, I took a freshman class on debate and I went to a tournament. I must be getting into Harvard now. No, you will not. The other extreme is, debate is useless. You should just focus on school or focus on swimming or whatever activity you can come up with. Not true. Debate is potentially very useful. It is all about how you go about debate that defines whether it is useful and how useful it is. So the concept that I think I want to introduce first is information asymmetry. The basic concept here is very simple. Admissions officers do not know nearly as much about debate as you do. This is exacerbated by the fact that a lot of people, maybe even most people, are either overclaiming or overframing their accomplishments. What do I mean by this? I think a lot of people say, oh, I won this tournament that had teams from 4 states and 50 teams. So I'm going to call it a national tournament. Maybe not capitalize the N on national, but if it's just a national tournament, then sure. Then someone else actually wins the national tournament, the NSDA national tournament. So both of these things are on the respective candidates' resumes. Now, these things could not be more different in terms of the difficulty of accomplishment and how much they should mean. But I suspect that they are quite a bit closer than most debaters think when it actually comes to the decisions that admissions officers make. Now, to be clear, I don't want to overstate my case here. I think the TOC or NSDA nationals are things that people can probably understand. I mean, admissions officers have seen debaters before. And secondarily, there are ways that you can describe your accomplishments that can help them break free from that din a little bit. So mentioning a specific amount of teams or amount of states or whatever, that can help a little bit. But my point more broadly here is two things. One, being good is neither necessary nor sufficient. It is not necessary. You don't have to be good to make debate valuable, but it is not sufficient. Being good at debate is not enough to get you into college. The second implication is just directly drawn from that, which is that it is more about what you can do with debate than what you do in debate. How can you frame debate as a useful thing, as something that is worth getting you into that school for? So what do you do with debate? First thing is you should probably talk about it. How do you talk about it? A couple of ways. First thing, oftentimes, I think a lot of essays, shorter essays from schools, will ask you about an issue that you care about, why you started caring about it, how you care about it, etc. Debate is an absolutely excellent mechanism to find those issues and to say something meaningful about them. Debate exposes you to a wide variety of issues, which are politically quite weighty or potentially very interesting and can be approached from a variety of angles. And most people are just not exposed to the kinds of things in the kind of depth that debaters are, which is something you don't realize, but is absolutely true. And so that information and that knowledge is something that you can absolutely use when it comes to asking about an issue you care about. Now, to be clear, just saying, oh, I researched this topic and I found out that it was kind of interesting, probably not going to be a winning essay. But the fact that you have that exposure allows you to then, find out more about that. So for example, back in my sophomore year in the Stone Age, there was a topic about prescription drug pricing. Now, I think it's absolutely possible that someone, finds out about this topic and researches this topic and becomes really interested in the pharma sector, and potentially interns at a pharmaceutical lab or campaigns for some kind of price control, etc. And that can be a really persuasive way to frame it, because you say that you understood something from both a research perspective and a real life perspective. I don't know, depends on the situation, obviously, but I think that debate is a very useful avenue for finding those kinds of issues. Secondly, debate can be quite helpful in a why school essay, which a lot of schools are going to ask. I think talking about the team at that school is very useful. That being said, just listing the competitive sort of resume of that team is not particularly interesting to admissions officers. They can also Google, right? They know that their team is third or fourth or first or whatever it is. Now, is it better than nothing to show that you know that? Yes. But what is quite a bit better than just saying that you know the team is something about how you would fit into the team. And the way that you get to that question of fitting into the team is to understand the team a little bit. Now, to be clear, it is going to be very difficult for you to really understand a team from just looking at it. But there are things like every team, almost every team has a social media account, has a website. All of these things are places you can glean useful information, just tidbits that can help you out in contextualizing how you would fit into that team. Because at the end of the day, what schools are trying to understand is who you would be on campus, at least to some extent. And if you say, oh, I would want to debate because I like debate and the team is good, fine, but anyone could say that. Not super useful. If you say, this team does these kinds of trips, and I'd particularly like because I want to go to this place and do this specific thing, that is something that really helps admissions officers understand what would this person be on campus, what niche do they fit into, what niche do they fill, and that is something that I think is very valuable at the margins. Last thing, possibly the most important thing, maybe the most obvious thing too, though, is to avoid triteness. People can write, and people do write. Okay. I didn't really know whether I should join debate, but then I joined, and it taught me a lot about research, and I learned how to speak better, and I had fun. Wow. Not exactly shocking, not exactly world-beating. So what kind of evocative specific experiences can you bring up? I think a lot of people sort of mock the sports injury essay. But the thing here is that an essay about debate where you say, oh, I lost some rounds and ended up winning the tournament or whatever, is the same as the sports injury essay. It's just a different activity. You want to avoid that, no matter the activity, no matter the context. So I urge people to stay away from either, oh, debate is generically good, or here's a generic experience I had in debate. Talk about specific moments, specific things that are unique to you that say something about you as a person. And obviously me saying this is potentially not so useful because those experiences are very much dependent on you. But I urge you all to think beyond just, here's debate, I want to describe debate. You don't want to describe debate, you want to describe you. How does debate help describe you? That's what you want to think about when you're writing the essays. Second thing you should do with debate is show non-competitive involvement. So I want to sort of warn against the first way this gets interpreted, which is that people think, oh, this just means being a captain or being the president of your team. No, it doesn't. Being a captain or a president is neither necessary nor sufficient. It is not necessary. You don't have to be a captain or a president to show non-competitive involvement. It is not sufficient. Saying you were a captain means really, really very little, just in and of itself. I know this. So the question then that they want to actually know is, what do you do for the team? Telling them you're a captain tells them your title. Telling them what you do for your team, it tells them about you. And that is the central thing you want to do. So were you the one who ran practices? Were you the one who prepared the evidence? Were you the one who led people to the first, national tournament? All of these things are specific details that will help understand what do you do as opposed to what does your title do generically, because leadership is not just about titles, it is about actual action. Next thing is to give back. And I want to warn even more heavily here. the rash of individuals who start their own organizations or nonprofits or all of these things for the sake of college admissions is bad. It's very bad. Please do not do this if you do not genuinely care about the issue and genuinely have the means to change in a unique way. There's a couple of reasons for this. One, as I think that it's fairly instrumentalizing to consider the act of giving back to be something that you do for a college, especially if you're not actually helping out. And secondly, that running your own nonprofit or your own organization tends to be way less efficient because you just do not have the expertise to do it most of the time. 99% of the time, you'd be better served joining an already existing organization and filling in there. A couple of years ago, there was this organization founded by some folks in my grade that was like a debate book club sort of thing where they would like send books to people. I guess it was sort of for college admissions. I think it floundered within a couple of months because there just isn't the expertise or the willpower to run these kinds of things on your own. So if you do genuinely want to give back, it can be helpful for college, but don't do it for college. And if you do want to give back, get involved in ways that are like existing already as opposed to founding your own idiosyncratic thing. It's really easy to get involved a little bit. Oftentimes, middle schools have summer camps. There's often urban debate leagues. There's often free organizations that help with debate materials. Tons of things, specific organizations that advocate for gender equality or racial equality in the debate space, like Beyond Resolved. Like all of these things are things that are meant to get involved in. So do if you care. And it can help, and you want to describe your experiences in those as well. But don't just, found your own organization and do nothing with it and say that you did an amazing thing. Not ethical. I want to then talk about the sort of other end of the spectrum, which is what will debate do for you? I think there's a couple of things, and I'll put some cautions on each one of them. So the first thing is debate shows that you are capable of undertaking extensive academic work. Colleges care about this. The reason why is very simple. You will be taking harder classes in general in college than you will in high school. So if you aren't prepared, then they will have to deal with that, and they don't like to deal with that. Given that, the fact that you do debate is in and of itself a strong signal that you are able to undertake relatively complex academic work. This is not ipso facto true, though, right? I mean, you just show that you are committed to debate, that you actually care about it, that you do a lot of work in it, etc., to also show the college that you have those tools to succeed in their classes, etc. The second thing debate does, and this is one where I want to put an important caution on, is that it helps you construct a very persuasive argument. Therefore, writing essays tends to be a lot easier for debaters than it is for other people. Beware, though. This is a tip that I have not seen, but I think is very useful. Debaters tend to have a particular way of articulating arguments and articulating essays, which is very much claim warrant impact following the structure of an argument in a debate space. This often isn't what people are looking for in essays. You don't always need to warrant every claim in an essay, nor should you a lot of the time. On the other side of the spectrum, there's a lot of things that you should do in essays that aren't needed for debate. A lot of descriptive characterization, etc., that you really want there to sort of talk, to sort of send a message about a certain moment that you're experiencing, something about you. That doesn't fit neatly into the claim warrant impact structure. And this sounds super reductive. You're like, yeah, no duh, I'm not going to write like a case when I'm, writing a college essay. But surprisingly, it isn't, because you'll find yourself structuring your essays in debate-y ways and not realize it. So I urge you all to look at your essays and look at your work under something of a critical eye and see, am I becoming too debatey? Is the way I'm writing becoming too debatey? Is the way I structure my thoughts becoming too debatey? And this often can be done by, consulting people who aren't in debate and seeing what they think. Like if something seems redundant to them, it probably is redundant and you just don't realize it because you're too built into the idea of having warrants for every single claim. So keep that in mind. Last thing is, debate gives you a network of similarly driven peers and coaches. You should ask them about their college experiences. It is true that you can ask a lot of people about college experiences, but the experiences of a debater, if you are also a debater, are generally going to be somewhat more similar than they will be if just a random person at that school, even if you don't want to get involved in the debate team specifically. So asking them these kinds of things is, and I think this is where like the way you do debate also matters. If you're doing debate super isolated and not really trying to do very much with it beyond just like research, that can help you in some ways. But I think that one of the major parts of debate, one of the amazing things about debate is the kind of people that you were able to meet. So I'm not saying that you have to be a social butterfly at every tournament or whatever, but take those opportunities a little bit, reach out a little bit. I think it can really help in the long term, and it can pay a lot of dividends. And the conversations I had with former debaters were instructive to me in deciding what colleges I wanted to apply to, etc. Second thing, what will debate do for you? It can be really, really transformational to you as a student. And this is the part where I get into sort of preparing for college yourself. There's three things here. Firstly, you learn how to research effectively and synthesize complex academic work. This is not a skill that everyone has. This is where it's important to talk about how you do debate as well, though. If the way you do debate is one in which you search for constant shortcuts, where you take relatively low quality evidence and try to spin it into something that it's not, haphazard strategies, etc., it will just be much less useful to you as a college preparation tool. And now, to be clear, it is fine to pursue debate as a purely competitive for the win activity and not consider it as an educational activity at all. I mean, maybe it's not fine, but some people do it like that. Fine. But I think you're missing something. And I think that the ability to prepare yourself for college while also engaging in an extremely fun, thought-provoking activity is one that people shouldn't pass up. And so not taking shortcuts doesn't just help you be a more ethical person within the debate space, but it helps you be a far, 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 far more prepared person when it comes to actual college work. Secondly, the ability to formulate and understand an argument. This is the flip side of what I was talking about earlier. You will always have debate mode turned on, and sometimes you will have to turn it off. But the fact you have that mode is an extreme advantage, because coming up with that claim, warrant, impact structure is obvious to you, maybe too obvious, but it is not obvious to a lot of other people. And that is something that is really useful in a lot of academic contexts, where a lot of the things, right? I mean, you're trying to draw a conclusion about the world, you're trying to draw causality. Every sort of response that you could come up with as a debate argument is a potential reason why that causal mechanism isn't true, and something that you would have to address in a high-quality paper. Thus, the fact of being able to generate those arguments, of generating all of those thoughts, is a really important tool. And I really found myself often when I'm writing essays about like political economy or whatever, that I'm thinking, okay, if this is an argument, what would my responses be? I list those as the objections to the potential hypothesis, and then I try to address those objections as best I can, which also requires a little bit of debate ability. So I really can't emphasize this enough. I think the ability to formulate an argument is an extremely important one. Third thing is it gives you an array of disparate knowledge about the physical intellectual world. By physical world, I mean that you just know more about things that happen. Pharmaceutical debates, debates about the Middle East, debates about all kinds of things are ones that debate can really ground you in and give you a lot of background information in, which helps in class discussions. It helps in pursuing research areas that you care about. It helps just like doing better on tests. A lot of things that it will always help you with. Second thing gives you knowledge about the intellectual world. So schools of thought, right? And this isn't necessarily true for every debate format, but the ability to understand certain deontological principles. You're probably going to read Kant at some point in college, so having the debate background in that is kind of useful. Beyond that, if you're interested in sort of critical debate, then the schools of critical theory are certainly far more open to you once you've already sort of dipped your toe into them in a debate context as well. So I think there's a lot of ways in which debate can give you this information. Beyond telling you how to think more effectively, it also just gives you things that you can think about and do better in college with. An important caveat, though, I mentioned this at the beginning and I bring it up again because it's very important. The primary reason you should do debate is never because it will get you into college. There are two reasons for this. One is that it is just too unreliable. And I say this full well knowing that debate is really, really helpful to the vast majority of people who get it, do debate and get into college with debate. It is still not strictly worth it. The effort return calculus generally is not going to work out. If you just purely want to get into college, there are plenty of other things you could probably do. I am not the guru of the college admissions process, but I suspect that if you really focus on gaming the system as much as possible, you take all of the energy you put into debate and you put it into the game of the system, maybe you do better. I don't know. I mean, you definitely shouldn't do that, to be clear, but I don't know. All I'm saying is that debate should not be the sole thing here. Second thing is that it's terrible for your experience in the activity. Putting the pressure on yourself to think that, oh, every round is determinant of college, or the reason I am doing that is college, makes it really, really, really unfun. And I know this from just knowing people who have gone to debate that way. They just don't enjoy the activity as much. Here's where this matters, right? Because you might be saying, oh, I don't care about enjoyment, I want to get into college. It becomes self-defeating because the only way that debate actually helps you is if you have a good experience. There's a couple of reasons for this. One, if you have a good experience, you're just more likely to put in the work, to stay in the activity, to do all the things that are just really important, to like, talking about it in a college essay, etc. Secondly is that it will show. The way that you talk about debate, if it is something that you genuinely don't care about except for its college admissions purposes, will always be inauthentic when you talk about it in essays. And I think that inauthenticity makes it just harder to describe yourself on a page. If you genuinely care about debate for non-college reasons, the fact of caring in those ways and that you can talk about and that genuinely represents yourself. And I think that matters a lot and means a lot to college admissions. So I think the general point here is that it is just self-defeating. If you are doing it for college, you will not enjoy it enough for it to be useful to then get into college. So I think this should probably cover that. I'll add just here a quick pitch for debating in college, because I think that there's a sort of a stigma around, oh, I do it in high school because I want to get into college, but what am I going to do with it in college? And this is also sort of addressing the question of talking about college debate teams in your essays. I think debating in college is great. I think there's a bunch of reasons why. It's generally a lot less stressful than high school debate. I think people are just more secure and don't feel like they need to win for the sake of college. I think it gives you an amazing social sphere and fun shared experiences with a lot of people who you are probably relatively similar with, given you are engaging in a similar activity with. I think in college, when you get there, a lot of the time it is somewhat intimidating. You are thrust into a sea with people who you just do not know. And this is like relatively trite and obvious, but debate certainly offers you a space where you are forced, for lack of a better term, to interact with folks. And these folks are going to be people who are genuinely fairly similar to you, and you can find lifelong friends in. I'll also say that competition generally is exhilarating. People kind of forget this, but it is fun to compete. It is fun to be in an academic activity. And in college, like, there's obviously opportunities to research and to learn about the world, but that fact of competition is something that often, if you're not doing a sport, you will miss out on. So I think debate is an opportunity to keep that going and keep that fun edge to the activity. Lastly, you meet people from other schools, you learn about their experience, etc. You create potential networks that can be useful to you in the long term. Now, again, the reason you should not do debate is, the way you should do debate is not purely transactional, but obviously these benefits do exist. So here comes the brief elevator pitch. We can help. All of us are more than happy to answer questions about college admissions, UChicago, and college debate. We will do so after the camp, during the camp, whenever. And so I think coming to CDA, we will meet 100% of needs-based aid. All you have to do is apply. It will be 2 days of 2.5 days really of instruction. It will not just be helpful for college, to be clear. I think it'll be really helpful for your PF skills. You can read all about it on our website. But if you are thinking about it in a college context as well, we are certainly more than happy to help. All of us have experienced the debate, not only debate in college, but debate in high school and how it gets us into college and all of these things. And we probably have varying experiences amongst ourselves. You can certainly find people who are more attuned to your specific way of doing debate, etc., which can be really helpful to you. And these connections can really help you if you do end up coming to UChicago as well. Thank you for listening. And if you do have any questions, feel free to message Chicago Debate Academy or come to the camp and ask me in person. All right. Thank you all.